What would you do if your home, your sanctuary, were inhabited by a presence that doesn't care if you're there, as long as you leave it alone? What would you do if that gentle, old presence decided that your family was its own, and suddenly you couldn't leave? Part 1, The Beginning. Mark and Clara, with their 8-year-old daughter, Lily, found the perfect house in Willow Creek, Vermont. It was an old Victorian house with a spacious porch and large windows. For Mark and Clara, it was a golden opportunity to live in a small town, far from the chaos of Boston. The only strange thing was the basement. The door to it was in the kitchen and was made of solid wood, with an old lock that had no key. The door was always cold to the touch, even in summer. When Mark asked the previous owner about the basement, he just smiled, a vacant and cold smile. "We keep it sealed. It's better that way. She likes to be alone." The phrase felt strange and ominous. Mark and Clara laughed it off, attributing the strangeness to the older man's eccentricity. They didn't know the phrase was a warning. In the first few days, the house was perfect. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the empty rooms seemed to hum with the promise of a new life. But at night, the house changed. A faint sound, a rhythmic creaking, came from downstairs. It wasn't a pipe noise. It was a familiar and comforting sound. A rocking chair. They looked at each other, confused. There were no rocking chairs in the house. The basement door, whenever they passed by it, was even colder. Lily began talking to a new imaginary friend she called Grandma Alara. The girl told stories about the house. Grandma Alara said the basement is her room, and she told me not to bother her. Mark and Clara found the story amusing. She was a child with a vivid imagination. Part 2, The Presence Grows. But then, Lily's friendship with Grandma Alara began to have a cost. Lily became quiet, withdrawn. She stopped playing with the other children and spent hours sitting near the basement door, murmuring to herself. One night, Clara found an old, rusty sewing needle in her jewelry drawer. She knew she didn't own the needle, and the only explanation she had was that the previous owner must have left it there. But the next day, she found a bone button in her coffee cup. She looked at Mark, who seemed confused. "You have to stop playing pranks on me." "Mark," Clara said, her voice filled with anger. "What kind of pranks?" Mark asked, genuinely confused. "I don't know what you're talking about." The discord began to grow. The aura from the basement, which they called Alara, seemed to be manipulating the family against itself. One night, Mark found Clara's favorite book, torn to pieces. He knew Clara was very careful with books. "What the hell is this, Clara?" he yelled. "It wasn't me," she yelled back, tears in her eyes. "You think I would do that?" As they argued, a faint violin sound began to play from the basement. It was a soft, ancient melody, almost a lullaby. The music was terrifying. The fight stopped. The sound of the violin stopped, and the only thing they could hear was their heavy breathing. The ghost didn't want them to fight. It wanted them to be a happy family. It was as if it were testing them to make sure they were worthy of its presence. Part 3, The Revelation. Mark, terrified, decided he needed answers. He called the previous owner, who seemed reluctant to talk. After much insistence, the man finally told the story. The woman, Alara, had lived in the house for over 100 years. She was a widow, and the basement was her sewing room. She loved the solitude and the peaceful life. She died in the house, and her spirit never left. "She doesn't like to be disturbed," the man said, "but she likes company. She just wants a family to take care of, but she won't allow them to leave. The last phrase made Mark's blood run cold. The man said they had to flee the house without looking back. He ran back inside the house to Lily's room, where he found her sitting, talking to the empty air. "Grandma Alara said she wants us to meet her, Daddy," Lily said, her eyes big and scary. "She said we'll be her family." Mark and Clara looked at each other, panic taking over their bodies. They went to the basement door, determined to open it and deal with the presence once and for all. Mark grabbed a sledgehammer and broke the lock. The air around them turned icy cold. The smell of lavender, an elderly perfume, filled the air. The door creaked open, and a draft of cold air rushed into the kitchen. Mark looked inside. It wasn't a dirty, abandoned basement. It was a perfectly clean and impeccable room. A rocking chair was in the center, rocking slowly. There was a violin on top of a table. Mark went down the stairs. In the corner, there was a dusty photo of an old lady with a gentle smile on her face. It was Alara. When he got to the bottom of the stairs, the rocking chair stopped rocking. A soft, weak voice whispered, "You can be my family. I can take care of you." The voice wasn't a demon's. It was the voice of a lonely old lady who wanted a family. The horror was the fact that she was willing to go to any lengths to have them. Alara's voice became louder. "Don't try to leave. I won't let you leave me again." Part 4. The Escape and the New Beginning. They fled the house that night, leaving everything behind. They moved to a different city, but the presence didn't leave them. They could now hear the rocking chair in the attic of their new house. The smell of lavender lingered in the air. Clara could no longer touch her coffee cup, afraid of finding a bone button. Lily refused to go to her room alone, afraid of finding Grandma Alara. They felt relieved to escape, but the truth was they didn't escape. They just brought Alara with them. The presence wasn't confined to the basement of an old house in a small town. It was linked to them, forever. And now, every night, Mark and Clara wake up to the sound of a violin playing a lullaby, a sad and terrifying song, knowing that Alara is there. She is the guardian of the basement, the guardian of the family, and she won't let them go. What would you do if a ghost of an old lady wanted your family and the only way to stop her was to become the next ghost of the house?